Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I'm back in the building for another reaction. We're going to be looking at the unsolved demise of Fat Pat. Now, if y'all don't know, Fat Pat is a rapper out of Houston, Texas, of the legendary Screwed Up Clique. And yeah, he was taken too soon out the game. But personally, I think he's a amazing wordsmith. He was ahead of his time, honestly, in my opinion. But we're going to be checking out a video from Hello Yassine. And yeah, let's get into it.
February 3rd, 1998, Fat Pat was Houston's most promising up-and-coming rapper and set for great things. But on this fateful night, he had to make a stop at a promoter's home to pick up a paycheck. He went into an apartment block and didn't come out alive. He was shot dead, and who, why, and how are questions that were never answered. Fat Pat was born in 1970 and raised in the south side of Houston. From an early age, he had dreams of performing and gradually developed a love for hip-hop. Houston at this time wasn't really known for its hip-hop. Ghetto Boys helped change this, and their album We Can't Be Stopped was a major breakthrough for the city. However, a local artist named DJ Screw was not only making great music, but also creating beats that sounded completely different, and he invited local MCs from all over Houston to rap over them.
Called a Screw Tape, if nobody knows. Yeah, and people, yeah, everything he's saying so far is on point. And this is literally like him. So Fat Pat and his brother Hawk both have been untimely taken away from the rap game, mysteriously too. Like the demise of both of them have never been solved, honestly.
And if you needed evidence that we live in a small world, the late George Floyd, who rapped as Big Floyd, even appeared on one of DJ Screw's tapes. Fat Pat, as well as his brother John Big Dog Hawkins, were members of what became known as the Screwed Up Clique, and these original members then went on to become the Dead End Alliance.
Facts.
It was a new brand of music that was about to put Houston, Texas, and the South on the map. In the 90s, hip-hop was very much fixated on the East and West Coast, but artists like Outkast and Ghetto Boys began to make waves. It became clear that Southern artists were not trying to replicate the East and West, but were coming up with a sound of their own. Southern hip-hop was presented as a third coast or Gulf Coast, and you could narrow this down to 5 major cities: Atlanta, New Orleans, Memphis, Miami, and Houston. But DJ Screw's beats ensured that the music coming out of Houston wasn't merely Southern hip-hop, but Houston hip-hop. He introduced a new technique where he would slow down music for the entirety of the track and introduce drum kicks. This became known as the chopped and screwed sound, or screw music. This technique gave Houston its own unique sound. Alongside this new music, there was also a huge upsurge in lean culture, where cough syrup, promethazine was used as a drug. References to drank and lean is commonplace in hip-hop today, but this new drug was particularly taking hold here in the 90s. Drinking lean and this slowed down, trippy music that had more of a purple artistic take when you looked at album covers and things like that.
And I just want to say, like, everything he said so far is correct, but I do want to say that, like, DJ Screw said that the reason why he made chopped and screwed music is because he wanted to give people that feeling you felt when you were not sipping lean, smoking marijuana.
Incredibly well together, in the same way that LSD is associated with psychedelic rock or weed with reggae music. Fat Pat had released some mixtapes and appeared on tracks alongside Houston hip-hop legends such as Lil Keke, South Park Mexican, and even Ghetto Boys member Willie D and Scarface. In '97, he got signed by Rec Shop Records and began working on his debut album, Ghetto Dreams. For his debut LP, he recruited the producer Double D and also got him to rap on one of his songs, as the two had a good chemistry together. Other features on the album came from fellow Screwed Up Clique members such as Lil Keke, Big Steve, Mike D, and his brother Big Hawk. And if you wanted further evidence that we live in a small world, Fat Pat also wanted to recruit an up-and-coming R&B group in the area known as Destiny's Child, but they weren't available. Fat Pat was expected to be the first member of the Screwed Up Clique to reach nationwide success. He worked on his album throughout '97, and it was scheduled to be released in early 1998. He was destined for great things. But on February 3rd, 1998, fate would happen.
It's so cold because, like, that man didn't even make it to see his debut album. His debut album release, man. Like, he worked on it and didn't even get to see his work.
Have different plans for Fat Pat. Alongside some friends, he drove over to collect a paycheck at 10440 South Drive in Houston. He got out on his own and went to collect money from Kenneth Weasel Watson. What happened next depends on who you ask. One story is that Pat knocks on the door and gets no answer. When he realizes that Kenneth is not home, he makes his way back to the car. But when he was on his way out of the apartment building, he was shot dead by 2 gunmen. Another account is that Kenneth was home and he invited Pat into his apartment. And during this time, Kenneth asked Pat to call someone Pat knew who had just robbed Kenneth. While Pat was on his phone, Kenneth took out a gun and killed Pat. However, Kenneth Watson has never been found committing any crime relating to Pat's death. How Pat was killed raises a lot of questions, but why he was killed raises even more. Some allege that Fat Pat was killed by Watson, who felt that Pat had set him up to get robbed. But again, this has never been proven. Another rumor is that there was a dispute over unpaid debt. When his friends were waiting for Pat to come outside, they recall seeing two men running from the apartment. Nobody's been charged with this murder. The main suspect, Kenneth, is currently in prison for drug charges. The police obviously interrogated Kenneth, but there have been no further details on whether they believe that he was the culprit or even involved. If they did, they would have most likely pressed charges by now. Friends and family have also said that Fat Pat wasn't really living a gangster lifestyle. He was a lovable dude who happened to earn a living in music. Whatever happened on that day, the bottom line is that a young and talented man had his life cut short far too early, and he was laid to rest at the Paradise South Cemetery. 2 weeks after his murder, every rapper in Houston...
I believe the Weasel Cat was like a club promoter or something like that, and that's why he was going to get the paycheck. It was like the dude was a club promoter or something like that.
Gathered for the release party of Ghetto Dreams, Fat Pat's first album. It sold over 20,000 copies in the first week of its release in Houston. The single Tops Drops peaked at number 10 on the Billboard Bubbling Under Hot 100 and number 5 on Hot Rap Songs. While Biggie and Tupac have countless posthumous releases, Fat Pat was different in that he did not have one single album drop during his lifetime, and it was clear that Fat Pat had talent. Top Drops is an incredible party song and has turned into a club classic in Houston ever since. Songs like Reality show a more introspective side of his, and in a particular verse, he talks about the senseless violence in his area that may have even led to his own death. System got us killing each other, we supposed to love one another. The game got our minds in a headlock, but in reality, we working for a jail block. Will it ever stop? He's often given the label of Houston's Biggie or Houston's Tupac, and this is not just because he was gone too soon. He was also an incredibly talented rapper with a lot more to say. Like Biggie, he had incredible flows and often used R&B hooks. Like Pac, he was also prone to have introspective songs and social commentary. His second album, Thrown in the Game, was also released in 1998. A year later, fellow Screwed Up Click member D-Rec made a documentary entitled Fat Pat Ghetto Dreams in his honor as well. 3 more albums and the Greatest Hits album have since been released. The Houston hip-hop scene was devastated by the loss of Fat Pat. However, his tragedy would not be the last. The music was all about sipping, drank, and lean, and this drug was finally taking its toll on his brother. On November 16, 2000, DJ Click was found dead. His death was believed to have come from a codeine overdose. In 2006, another incident would add a further layer of heartbreak to the Houston.
But see, like then you have to even push it a little further with DJ Screw's passing, because I don't even like, people say it's either the story with DJ Screw's passing is either he passed from a lean overdose or he had heart problems, and I lean to think he just had heart problems, and something happened with his heart. That's what I am prone to believe. Some people say that, like, it's a lot of different perspectives on how DJ Screw passed away. So it's another one of those things that has a lot of different like stories attached to it, but nobody really knows how he passed.
Hip hop scene. Fat Pat's brother, Big Hog, was also murdered. And just like his brother, he was murdered under mysterious circumstances. The Houston hip-hop community was devastated once again, and John would join his brother Pat at the Paradise South Cemetery. Fellow Houston rapper Paul Wall said, "It's got to either be a case of mistaken identity or an attempted robbery by somebody who didn't realize who they were robbing." Hawk was all about positivity and bringing people together. Bun B from UGK said, "There were no chinks in this man's moral armor. Because he was a rapper, there will be people who will take his death the wrong way, but he was a peaceful guy and a family man who had no beefs with anybody." For the family, there are now not one, but 2 family members of unexplained murders, and nobody has been brought to justice. But the legacy from Fat Pat and the Screwed Up Click lives on. As we touched upon earlier, Fat Pat's Top Drops continues to be a party anthem in Houston. Megan Thee Stallion is from Houston, and despite only being 2 or 3 years old when he was murdered, cites Fat Pat as one of her idols. Her song Freaky Girls samples 25 Lighters, a song Fat Pat was featured on. The Screwed Up Click has had a bigger influence on Travis Scott, who was 6 years old when Fat Pat passed away. Like Megan, Travis sampled 25 Lighters for his song Can't Say. Drive also features a sample of Fat Pat's So Real, the Screwed version. The sound that Travis Scott has crafted is definitely indebted to DJ Screw.
Women retreat, all in too deep. Playing for keeps, don't play us for weeks. Yeah, I know that.
And the Screwed Up Click, at least partially. Even outside of hip-hop, UFC fighter and Houston native Derek Lewis has used Fat Pat's hit Top Drops as his entrance music. As of today, Fat Pat's murder and his brothers remain unsolved. But
it's like, I feel like it's a thing of like this. It's like people who know. And for that matter, they're not saying what they know. I think at the end of the day, that's what we chalk it up to. Like, it's people who know what happened and they ain't never gonna say nothing, and they just gonna take it to the grave. That's really what it is. Unfortunately, yeah, man. The streets will get those people. You know, life always has a way of what do you call it? It's karma. Karma comes for those people who know what happened, and so on and so forth. So that's the end of the reaction, y'all. What did you think? What should I review next? And I'm out.